It's funny. I was on a plane, maybe it's about a month ago, and somebody said to me, they recognized me and they said, "Hey, is Cooper Flagg overrated?" And I said, "Can I ask you a question back?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you hate Duke?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I thought so."
Yeah.
There's nothing to hate on this kid.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, William Liu. You're listening to the Hello and Welcome podcast presented by Betway. Joining me today is a very, very special guest, Dan Shulman, college basketball for ESPN and Blue Jays baseball, obviously, for Sportsnet. You also know Dan, obviously, from his coverage of the Canadian national team, both of the men's and the women's side. And I actually did not know how long that history has gone back for. But we'll get to his career history in a little bit because Dan, obviously in Toronto, we always hear you. We'll talk about the Blue Jays. This might be the one interview that we're not going to ask you anything to do with the Jays. Quite frankly, there's not that much good happening right now. Anyway, I want to ask because 2 weeks ago, Duke was taking down Notre Dame. No big story there, I suppose. But the big story there was projected number 1 overall pick, Cooper Flagg, drops 42. That's the ACC freshman record for scoring. It's also the first time a player from Duke scored over 40 since J.J. Redick in 2006. And I was watching the game, and I was like, that's Dan Shulman. And we have to ask him about being on hand for Cooper's career highlights. So, Dan, thank you for your time. Apologies for the long intro. And what was it like being there for that moment for Cooper?
It was great. I mean, I've been lucky enough that I've been at this a long time. This is actually my 30th year of college basketball for ESPN. So I did J.J. Redick games. I did Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett games and everybody in between. But Cooper Flagg is special. He really is. Not only 42 points on 14 field goal attempts. I think he went 11 for 14 from the field. He hit a few threes. He hit a bunch of free throws. He was just incredibly efficient. And the thing about Flagg, and I'm sure you know this, it's not just the scoring. And he can go out there and get 40 one day and get 13 the next day, but it's the rebounds, the steals, the assists, and the blocks. It's everything. As of a few days ago, I don't know if it's still current today, but as of a few days ago, he was leading Duke in all 5 categories: scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, and blocks, which if you really take a step back and think about it, is insane that one player can lead a team of that caliber in those 5 different statistics. But he impacts the game so many different ways, offensively and defensively. He's got an unbelievable motor. I hadn't seen a lot of him before he got to Duke, some YouTube videos here and there of high school or AAU, and we know how well he did for the select team against the U.S. Olympic team before the Olympics. But to see him on a regular basis, and I've been lucky enough to do a few of their games, he's kind of different every game in ways he can impact the game, but his motor is consistent. He's a great teammate. He's very, very well liked by coaches and players alike. And he's tremendous at this level, and he's going to be awfully special at the next level too, I think.
Yeah, I think, first off, when you look at how many teams around the NBA this season are pivoting towards tanking, various levels of sort of maybe just being bad or just maybe outright tanking. I think the Nets GM actually gave a statement basically confirming that they're tanking, as if trading 2 away their veterans wasn't obvious enough. But this is obviously the top prize. I don't have to tell anybody in Toronto this. And I think that that's actually a lot of the hope for Raptor fans who are listening to this is they want to know how Cooper's doing. And I think, there's some concerns, I suppose, if you're going to poke any holes at a player who's this accomplished so far, it would be with the scoring skill set. I think when you drop 42 in the efficiency that you mentioned there, that kind of erases some of that doubt. I would say maybe he's not Steph Curry, I guess, but
right, correct. Yeah.
He's got so many other ways that he contributes. And I think one thing that you mentioned, his motor, getting to see that up close in the moments that don't necessarily make it into a highlight reel. What can you say about sort of the personality and the person that he brings as a competitor?
Right. So a few things there. For people who don't know, this guy's 6'9", right? So he's not out there launching threes. And I'm with you. If you were going to poke a little hole in his game, it might be the 3-point shooting, but it's getting better and better quickly. It really, really is. At the beginning of the year, too, he tended to overhandle a little bit. And part of that, I don't think, was his fault. They were in a very close game with Kentucky that I was doing. And the last 2 possessions, they just gave him the ball and cleared out for him. Mm-hmm. So what's he going to do? And he was 17 then. That's the other thing. Even for a college freshman, he's young. He
Right.
just turned 18 in December. His ceiling is really high. So I think he's tightened up his handle. I think he's improved his shot. I'm a big believer in two things between college and the NBA, and people can feel free to disagree. I think it's easy. I mean, we see from the offense in the NBA, it's easier to score in the NBA than it is in college. If you've got a Cooper Flagg, the other team can load up on you. In the NBA, they can't do it as much because everybody out there is pretty talented. I think there's more room. The spacing's better. The game is officiated differently. There are so many different reasons why offense comes more easily in the NBA. How many times have you seen a guy who averaged 14 a year in college, and then he's averaging 23 a year?
Yeah.
23 a game, I should say, in the NBA. In terms of the motor, that's the second thing that I really believe strongly in. I think that's an intangible separator that maybe isn't considered enough. They look at a guy's vertical and his standing reach and his three-point shooting and all these tremendously important things. But sometimes I think motor is undervalued. This kid has an unbelievable motor at both ends of the floor. He can be on the weak side and, somebody drives by his man on the other side and he gets over and blocks the shot or deflects it or alters it or forces a bad pass. His effort is terrific. He plays the game the right way. It's funny. I was on a plane, maybe it's about a month ago, and somebody said to me, they recognized me and they said, "Hey, is Cooper Flagg overrated?" And I said, "Can I ask you a question back?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you hate Duke?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I thought so."
Yeah.
There's nothing to hate on this kid. Nothing.
Yeah.
Unless you hate Duke. And some people hate Duke, right? Some people love Duke and some people hate Duke. If you hate Duke, you're going to think he's overrated. But respectfully, I would say those people are wrong. This kid's great.
Yeah, I think the difference has been in college and the pro game with the spacing that you mentioned, and obviously a lot of other people being able to score. Although I got to say, Duke's supporting cast is not, he's not shy on good teammates either.
No, it's very good for the college level. It's very good. Yeah,
right. But I mean, I think to your point, Jason Tatum, it wasn't like he was averaging 25 when he played at Duke, or even Paolo Banchero wasn't averaging like. I don't even think he was averaging 20 at Duke, and yet obviously they go to the league and immediately they're high impact scorers, and now. Yeah. Tatum's a champion. Paolo's going to be a eventual superstar on that level. So, I think I want to ask you about sort of the atmosphere as well, because look, Duke is always, one of the top programs in the country. There's always a huge crowd surrounding it. I feel like in the last probably 10 years, the team with Zion, with RJ, Cam Reddish, Trey Jones, that was a really, really hyped class. And it felt like the atmosphere around Zion in particular was just like out of this world. I mean, even Obama showing up courtside in the game where his shoe exploded. How would you compare sort of the crowds and the response to Cooper and the hype, I guess, in the atmosphere?
It's a great question. So that year with Zion, again, I've been doing this 30 years. There's no team and no year where the hype around a team, and more so than not even hype, the atmosphere on a game in, game out basis, home, road, or neutral. There's no team that I've ever been around where it was like that. Before that season, I don't know if you remember, that team came to Canada and did a tour. They played in Toronto and Montreal. And ESPN wanted to show those games. So Jay Billis and I did those games for ESPN+. It's the only time in my career I got a chance to call NCAA basketball in my home country. And it was great.
Yeah.
And so we were in Toronto. And then when it really blew me away was when we went to Montreal. And the following, the fandom for the Duke team. That Duke team, and I don't think Reddish played, but Zion played and RJ played. I think Reddish was hurt at the time. But this was Duke playing three Canadian schools, 2 in Toronto and 1 in Montreal. And without question, Duke was the home team. People were rooting for Duke. Yeah. Now, that part of that is the Duke brand, which is enormous, as you know. Part of that is RJ Barrett is from Toronto. And a big part of that is Zion Williamson. And let's go back to not knowing what we know now. He was a freak, right? I mean, we never seen a guy like Zion Williamson. And as an aside, I really hope he can get healthy and
for sure
be the best version of himself, because it's pretty special. So that year was like traveling with the Beatles. I bounce all around the country, so I don't tend to see a team more than 3, 4, 5 times. I think I did 11 Duke games that year because they were just, it was bonkers, and they just kept putting me and Billis on the games. Quickly thinking through it, I think this Duke team would be second to that Duke team in terms of hype. there was a year, and my memory is not great, but the year Jabari Parker came in for Duke was the year Andrew Wiggins came in for Kansas. And they played each other in the Champions Classic at the beginning of the year. And that was a huge year for both of those. But by the end of the season, it hadn't quite turned into what you thought it might be in November. Certainly for Zion and RJ, it did. And certainly for Cooper Flagg and this team, it's projecting like it will. Because, again, for people who don't follow college basketball that closely, Duke's really good this year. They are, I don't know if the new poll as we speak has come out, but they're probably going to be second. They were 3 last week. They're probably going to be 2 this week. And they've beaten the number 1 team, Auburn. Like, they could easily be the number 1 team in the country. There are 2 other first-round picks on that team in Kamana Malawach and Con Knipple. I don't know exactly where they'll go. Maybe back end of the lottery, maybe a little bit further back. But this is a team that could win the national championship. So when you've got I don't want to say yet a generational player, but we don't see
right.
Once every 5 or 10 years, we see a freshman come along that's this good. And he's that guy. And when he's on this team and they're that good, I don't know if it's traveling like the Beatles, but it's like traveling with the Stones or the Who. It's pretty close.
Yeah, I'm sure wherever they go, NBA GMs are also following.
Yeah.
I'm sure Masai and company have paid a visit to go see the potential talent there. And as you mentioned, it's not just Cooper, right? It's Malawach, when you look at the numbers, because that game at Notre Dame when Cooper had 42, obviously he gets the headlines, but Malawach had 19 and 10 that game. Yeah. That was his best game in college, especially offensively. If you're not familiar with him, he's also super young. I believe he's 18 years old. Yes. He's shooting 83.8% from the field. Now, of course, anybody who shoots that high from the field is probably going to be a guy who is primarily finishing layups and dunks. But even if you're finishing layups and dunks, 83.8 is outrageous. Yeah, he's 7'2", 250 pounds already. Great shot blocking talent as well. What can you tell us about Malawach and sort of the progress, I guess, that he's taken? Because his path to Duke's right now has been, I guess it's a pretty unique coming from NBA Academy Africa.
Yeah, I mean, didn't start playing basketball till he was like 13 years old, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
Then you saw him, I saw him, we saw him for the first time in the Olympics, playing not a lot, but playing sparingly for South Sudan, the darlings of the tournament. And again, just a few minutes here and there, but playing against the likes of Embiid and Anthony Davis, among others, and kind of sort of held his own. So, where I notice it most in the games, the 19 and 10, that obviously that's the most important stuff. But I'm lucky enough that the day before the game or the morning of the game, I'm allowed to go see Duke practice or their game day walkthrough. And when you just see them running a drill, even if it's a walkthrough, half speed, and he is doing whatever he's supposed to do, and he's on defense, and he just raises his arms like this at the basket, you go, oh my God, look at how big this guy is. Like legit 7'2" with, and this is the kind of stuff NBA scouts love, a standing reach of 9'8". Yes. Meaning if he gets up on his tippy toes, he just might be able to touch the rim without even leaving the ground.
There's actually a video out there of him grabbing the rim and his feet are on the ground.
Yeah, I believe you. So I'm not into on YouTube and TikTok and all that. That's your generation, not my generation. So I don't see all that good stuff, but I totally believe it. It's insane. And you see guys like guards will get around their man and dribble into the paint. And then they'll just, it's like when a mouse runs into a room and sees a cat and says, "No, I'm out of here, man." They just turn around and go back. Yeah. And it makes Duke really good because the Duke, the perimeter players are like, hey, if they get by, like, don't foul. If they get by you, don't reach. You got that dude behind you. You're fine. So you're right. Almost all of his shots are right at the rim. I mean, he's a terrific lob threat and offensive rebounder and put it back in. Maybe he's taken a 15-foot jump shot in a game that I've done. I don't remember it, to be honest with you. So he's raw at the offensive end, but you can still score 15 a game with that skill set in the NBA. Sure. I think just by running the floor. I mean, they don't throw it in the post and back to the basket and say, go make a play, jump hook. They don't really do that, but just getting on the glass and running the floor and pick and roll lob threat. He can be a double figure scorer. He's going to be a first round pick, and he's the kind of guy, and this is everybody, but I think even more so for him. What he is at, let's assume he goes pro and he's in the league at 19. What he is at 19 versus what he'll be at 23 could be night and day. He's got a lot of room to grow.
It's the 30th anniversary, and our friends at Axe are joining the celebration with a limited edition collection that's as original as the Toronto Raptors themselves.
The collection includes 3 essentials to keeping you fresh: The body spray features 48-hour high-definition scent, blending sea mist and grapefruit to keep you unstoppable throughout the day. The deodorant stick is perfect for staying confident, with a scent that keeps you smelling irresistible while showing your Raptors pride. And the body wash delivers a luxurious lather that leaves you feeling clean and smelling astonishing after every shower.
For over 40 years, Axe has drawn on body spray research and the expertise of the world's leading perfumers to craft quality fragrances and help people feel confident in their own skin.
Find the Axe Toronto Raptors 30th Anniversary Limited Edition collection at all major retailers, Walmart, Shoppers Drug Mart, and Real Canadian Superstore. But act fast because it's only available for a limited time.
Celebrate the milestone with Axe and the Toronto Raptors. Channel the freshness, energy, and unstoppable spirit of our local champions, because smelling great is always a slam dunk. Yeah, and I think it's important to mention this because like this draft class is not just, the couple good players from Duke, but there's a lot of other talents as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, look, if the Raptors end up, the best lottery odds they can get is 14% chance on the number one pick. That's 1 in 6, that's less than 1 in 6. So even if you don't obviously get Cooper, I think some of the consolation prizes, so to speak, are still quite good. I know you obviously do a ton of college games. So are there other sort of more fringe players, maybe they don't play for Duke, but that have caught your eye? Maybe they're not first rounders, maybe they're late first rounders, early second rounders.
Yeah,
the Raptors
right.
got active undrafted.
Yeah, guys like Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, they're going to be in the top 5.
For sure.
I haven't done Rutgers. I've obviously seen them a little bit, and they're going to be tremendous talents at the NBA level. A guy who has really come on like gangbusters in the last few weeks is Ian Jackson in North Carolina.
Okay.
He's a freshman. And at the beginning of the season, Hubert Davis, former Raptor, among many other things, was trying to figure out his rotation. And Jackson was coming off the bench. And then they had an injury and they put him in the lineup. Or in another game, he just dominated the second half. And he and RJ Davis are now the 2 best players on Carolina. Jackson has an NBA skill set. I think he's about 6'4". He's not a point guard. He's a wing or a 2 guard. His shot is good, and his ability to get to the basket is sensational, whether it's in the half court or especially in transition. I think whoever gets Jackson is going to see a guy who's going to score thousands and thousands and thousands of points in the NBA. I've been wrong many times before, but
okay.
I think he's really, really, really good, and a guy who's definitely going to go after this year. Trey Johnson at Texas. Texas is not having a good year. But Johnson is, I want to say 6'6". I don't think he's 6'7". Let's call him 6'6". He's a wing freshman. He can really shoot the ball. He's athletic. I wouldn't say he's like crazy 10 out of 10 athletic, but he's plenty athletic. And I remember talking to Rodney Terry, the coach of the Longhorns, when I did the game, because they got a lot of veterans on that team. And he kind of became the dude right away when they got there. And I said, how were the older guys about doing that? And this is one of these intangibles that sticks in the back of my brain. Terry said he's the first one in the weight room every day. He's the first one in the gym every day. He's a yes sir, no sir, polite, respectful young man. All he wants to do is get better every single day. And those are good qualities. He plays hard and he's got tremendous talent. And I think he's going to be a very good player. I really like Liam McNeely at UConn. I don't know where he's projected. I don't look at mock drafts as much as you would know more than me. But I think Liam McNeely, as kind of an NBA 3. I think he's 6'7", 6'8". He can shoot it, and he'll get in there and get his nose dirty too. I mean, he's got a little bit of nasty in him, and I like that. He'll mix it up at both ends of the floor. I think he's another guy with a motor and an attitude that is going to serve him well in the NBA. And again, maybe he's a late first or an early second, something like that. But I think he's going to be a nice NBA player too. And we've seen it. Again, you would know better than me because this is more your area than mine. There's all kinds of value in the second round. All kinds of value in the second round. So it's funny though. Like you look at college, like Mark Sears is going to be a first-team All-American probably. Janai Broom is going to be a first-team All-American. RJ Davis has been a first-team All-American. And I don't know what kind of careers they're going to have in the NBA. I believe talent shines through eventually, but as you know, the NBA looks for length and athleticism and positionless basketball and things like that.
Well, I mean, especially now, I mean, this is all the more nerdy kind of like new CBA talk, but like there's a lot of like value in second rounders in particular. I think they can sort of like play around with their contracts in a way that is a little bit more cap friendly for the teams in the league that are a little bit more cash strapped and things like that. And when you are taking that kind of risk on a second rounder, you're hopefully looking for players with some experience that's bankable. Like you look at the Raptors taking Jamal Shead, for example, last year.
Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense in the sense that, like, yes, he's older, but he's proven a history of being a winning player. The Raptors have also proven a history of drafting small point guards who are really good defensively and bringing them into their system. And I think so far people are pretty happy with Jamal as a rookie as well. I think because once again, like you're a two-sport guy, and I'm sure you've done more than just baseball and basketball. That's primarily what you do. But again, just because of the Blue Jays, we think of you so strongly here as a baseball guy. But I was doing more prep and more research because obviously, it's been a great pleasure to cover the Canadian men's and the women's national program in the last couple of years, and you've been the face of that with the broadcast there as well. But I didn't know your history with Canada basketball extended back to 1994. I mean, you must have been 27 years old, and you're calling Dream Team 2 at the FIBA World Championships here in Toronto. Like, that's incredible. That's 30 years.
Only friends, family, not even friends. Only a couple family members and you know that now. So it's not, it's funny because I've had people before Paris, I had people talking to me about, have you ever done an Olympics before?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, well, I just did Tokyo. Like
well,
like, did you watch Canada or the women in Tokyo? The men weren't there, or did you watch any of the basketball? Yeah. I said, like, that was me. So it's funny. I know there's much more of an association in Canada for me with baseball. In the U.S., it used to be both. Now it's more basketball. That I'm not doing ESPN baseball anymore. But my association, for lack of a better word, with Canada basketball does go way back. So, and let me say this, doing Tokyo, although it was remote, did it from Toronto, doing Paris were wonderful. The highlight for me, though, was doing the World Cup. And that was remote too. Alvin Williams and I were sitting in a studio.
Yes. At 6 a.m.
Yeah,
probably 3 when you got to the studio to get makeup and stuff.
No makeup. This is it, baby. You take it or leave it. No makeup.
At 3 a.m. Oh man, okay.
Even at 3 a.m. So it's I was one of those guys who on courtside or DAZN or whatever the spot was over the years. Like I was waking up at 2 a.m. sometimes to watch that America Cup game. I mean, I just kept to myself. It was just me as a fan. Sure. But I'm Canadian and I love basketball, and I've always loved Canada basketball. And so the World Cup was probably the pinnacle of excitement for me. That game against Spain where they were done. Man. They were dead. They were going to lose that game, and then they come back and win it and eventually clinch the spot. Nothing's been more exciting for me to work on than that. But prior to that, like in Victoria, the qualifier in Victoria, which was, what was the year of that one? I think
that was 2021. It was supposed to be with fans.
That would have been June or maybe early July, June probably of 2021. Heartbreaking, right? Lose to Saturansky and the Czechs.
Yep.
Did that. The one in Mexico when they lost to Venezuela.
Oh my God.
Did that. And
you're
again,
opening every wound.
And it doesn't bother me that nobody knows this, but Leo Routens and I did those games from a studio in Toronto, and they had beaten Venezuela by 20 in the round robin. And all they had to do was beat them again in the semis, and they got punked. They got FIBA'd. I've watched a lot of FIBA basketball, and it's funny. I have so many friends who say, well, it's gold or silver, right? It's silver at worst for the man. And I was like,
it just doesn't work like that.
It's different. You can say Gershon Yabusele till you're blue in the face, but until you see Gershon Yabusele, you don't necessarily know, right? So
sure,
did Victoria, did Mexico City, but the first thing I ever did, as you said, was in 1994, which was Dream Team 2. Dream Team 1, Barcelona 92, Dream Team it was then called the World Championship of Basketball in 1994. It wasn't called the World Cup yet. And it was in Toronto and in Hamilton. And this was before the Raptors, right? So we didn't have a lot of people in Toronto. Like guys like you didn't exist back then. There weren't that many of us who were following basketball. And I was a talk show host on The Fan at the time. And John Shannon, who you may or may not know, John Shannon was in charge of CTV Sports then and hired me to do the Lillehammer Olympics in February and the World Championship of Basketball in August. CTV Sports didn't have like the stable of people that CBC did or TSN did or anything like that. So I hadn't even started the Blue Jays yet. I was at the Fan, and he asked me, like he knew I talked about basketball on the air at the Fan, and I had done a lot of basketball games at Western. Like now we're going back to when I'm in university.
Oh, hell yeah.
I did the Mustangs for a few years, but I had barely done any basketball after that. And God bless him, for reasons unknown to this day, John Shannon trusted me. And Leo and I did that. And it's 30 years ago. I don't even know if you were alive back then, but again, it was heartbreak. From what I remember, Rick Fox was on the team. A very young Steve Nash. I mean, a very young Steve Nash was on the team. Ronnie McMahon, I think, was the starting point guard. Steve Nash was the backup, but played very well. And Canada lost to Greece in a heartbreaker in the quarterfinals, or otherwise they would have made the Final Four. So until the World Cup in 23, like everything I felt like I was cursing them or anything, because I was there for all of the heartbreaking games. But yeah, I love it. And I hope they keep the core together. You know, it starts with Shea, obviously, and if Shea and RJ are there and Dylan Brooks is there, you're off to a great start. And then, you look at Dort and Nembhard, and I think we'll see guys like Shaden Sharp and Ben Mathurin. It's just a question of the bigs, right? Can they get enough quality bigs to compete? But if the core is committed, I got to believe they're going to be in Los Angeles in 2028 as well. And I would love to be there.
And honestly, you being at all these moments too, I think, I'm sure there's other details of your contract that I'm not going to ask you about, but I've heard that the one exception you have put into your contract was always if you get a chance to call games for Canada's basketball program, that no matter where you were, that you would be able to get that exception. And I know that like that's not an easy thing to get, but when you're really passionate about that, I mean, I think for you, like you must be, you're a very inspirational character for a lot of people who work in Canadian media, because everyone thinks in Canada, and maybe not even just in media in general, but you got to go to the States to make it big. But the fact that you were, on all the biggest platforms in the States as well, the highest level in baseball, the highest level in basketball as well, and then you choose to come back, and you're so proudly Canadian and proudly Torontonian, like, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but that does really inspire a lot of people who work in media in Canada.
Well, I appreciate that. I think, part of me wanting to come back was professional and sentimental, and part of it was family oriented. And I'm kind of half and half now, still doing college basketball in the States, but no baseball anymore. And always lived here, never lived anywhere other than Toronto. Had to commute, have to commute a lot, obviously, but I've always lived here. But the contract thing you're talking about, back when I was doing baseball for ESPN, and it was a bit of a struggle, but I want to thank my bosses there. But the clause was, if the Canadian men ever qualify for the Olympics, I have the right to go do it if somebody hires me to do it. And ESPN said, sure. So then when I left ESPN baseball and came back to Sportsnet to do the Blue Jays, I told my Sportsnet bosses about it. And I said, what do you think? And they said, fine. They didn't put up any kind of a fight. Sure. And I really, really appreciated it. I'll tell you what, last year it made for a bit of a strenuous middle of the summer, doing Blue Jay games every day, and then leaving on a Thursday, getting to France on a Friday, and doing 2 games on a Saturday, trying to prep for 12 men's teams and 12 women's teams. It's a labor of love. Like, I love doing it. Yeah. But I think we did 26 games in 14 days over there or something like that. And had an absolutely tremendous time. And it's one of the highlights for me. Like when people say, hey, look back and what are the things you're happiest you've done or you're most proud of or whatever. Doing Duke Carolina basketball games, that's right at the top of the list. Doing the World Series for ESPN Radio, that's right at the top of the list. But I'll tell you, that World Cup is right up there. And if you and I talk again in 4 years, I hope I'm saying, and that fill in the blank, whatever the outcome is in Los Angeles is right up there. If they, if they can play better and go as far as they're capable of going. And I hope the women, there's a lot of talent on the women's side, and there's a lot of talent coming as well. Like Silas Swords. I mean, holy cow, she is phenomenal. And I think not only is she going to be obviously on that Olympic team if they make it, but she might be the best player on that team by the time 2028 rolls around. She is just dominating at Michigan, having a great freshman season. So I hope for basketball fans around the country, and there are so many more. I know I'm rambling here. When I was a kid in the 70s, we had a basketball hoop on the driveway. I wasn't any good, but I liked playing. nobody had a basketball hoop on the driveway. Like my dad taught me about John Havlicek and JoJo White and Dave DeBuscher and guys like that. Nobody
knows who that is.
And I loved hockey as much as anybody. Daryl Sittler was, is, and always will be my favorite athlete. But it's so fun for somebody my age to see your generation and how many basketball fans there are, because this didn't exist back in the day.
Sure.
And it's great to see how it's grown.
Hey, man.
Hey, buddy.
Just recently hit the big 4-0. What about you, bro?
A little more recently 4-0, but we are both in the 40 club.
Let me tell you, man, being an adult really comes with its share of challenges.
Definitely. I think both you and I are homeowners, and I think we're both also dealing with mortgages in life.
Yeah, man, mortgage rates, choosing the right terms, dealing with paperwork, it can be really overwhelming,
I still don't know how that works.
Well, listen, that's where our friends at Dominion Lending Centers come in, man. They make the whole process simple and stress-free. Whether you're renewing your mortgage, hunting for the best rates, or if you just need advice, they're here to help, bro.
You know what? I am looking for that advice, and I think that's why I'm going to visit www.dominionlending.ca.
Yeah, man, www.dominionlending.ca. Take the guesswork out of your mortgage and step into financial confidence with our friends at Dominion Lending by our side.
No, we're super blessed. We're super blessed. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to ask you 3 more questions real quickly, and then kind of jumping all over the place here, but I just thought it would be good to ask you a couple of these things. It was brought to my attention that you used to do NBA games, because I searched their name into Twitter, which, you know, sometimes can net some bad results. In this case, universally positive. I got to say, you might be the only person on the planet that has a universally positive approval rating.
Well, I can find a couple guys for you
on Twitter. This one, so I found a tweet from Sam Decker, who obviously, very prominent collegiate player, went on to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
He tweeted out, Dan Shulman needs to be doing more NBA games like this. He's one of the best ever for ESPN. And it's in response to a video where Kobe Bryant had put up 38 points in the 2009 NBA playoffs against the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice guy, Sam Decker, for saying this. But also, I think listening to the call, it was very cool to hear a Kobe highlight with your voice over the top of it. I understood you used to do a lot of the games with Hubie, and Hubie actually this year will be finally retiring.
Yeah.
Congratulations to him. He's 91 years old. It's just truly an inspiration.
Yeah.
Is there a message that you would like to send Hubie?
So let me back up a little bit. I did some NBA for TSN in ancient times, like 95, 96, did some Raptors games and some Grizzlies games, but I was the B guy. And then ESPN offered me a full-time job doing college basketball. So I did that. And then in 2006, ESPN came to me and said, we'd like you to switch from college to the NBA. And I said, I'd love to do the NBA, but I don't want to leave college. So I gave up some of my radio baseball to lighten the schedule a little bit. And for 5 years from, I think it was 06 through 11, I did a lot of NBA. Like Breen was the guy and still is the guy, and legend, great friend of mine, an absolute legend. And Mike Tirico was still with ESPN then. He was doing games. And then I guess I was kind of the number 3 guy. And so those guys would get like the Garnett, Pierce, Ray Allen, Celtics. They would get the Heat. I was like the Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Utah, Denver, Portland dude. And I loved it.
Yeah.
Those arenas were wild, smaller towns, only game in town, that sort of thing. Loved going to San Antonio and doing games, and absolutely loved Greg Popovich. And I'm proud to say Greg Popovich really liked me, and that made my day, because
you didn't get popped. No pop moments from
well, so you want a quick pop story? So we used to do something. I don't know if they still do it anymore, but some games didn't have a reporter. So the play-by-play guy, at the end of the first quarter, ran across the court and interviewed the visiting coach. And at the end of the third quarter, ran across the court and interviewed the home coach. And the Breen games always had a reporter. My games didn't always have a reporter. So they actually at ESPN called it the Shulman Shuffle a little bit when the play-by-play guy had to go across the court. So I race across the court and I asked Pop a question. I don't remember what it was. And he goes, that's a really good question. And he gives me a good answer. And I mean, like, I strut back over to the table.
Oh, yeah.
So we finish the game. The next week, we go into, I have them again, and we go into Pop's office before the game to meet with the coach, as we always do. And I said, Pop, like, you made my month. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I told him what he had said. And he goes, well, it was a good question. An hour later, I do the same thing. One word answer. He didn't like it and just boom, shut me down. And then I had them again like 3 weeks later, and I said, "What happened, Pop?" He goes, "I don't know." He goes, "I don't even remember." He goes, "It's just I'm in the moment, and it works or it doesn't." And he just gets so locked in. But I was lucky. I did, some LeBron games, Garnett games, a lot of Kobe games, a lot of Western Conference games, as I said. Hubie is one of the most special, amazing, phenomenal people that I've ever known. Never mind worked with. He did the first NBA game I did for ESPN was with Hubie. And he was always, now, come on, how can I make you more comfortable? And I was like, Hubie, you're the legend. I'm the new guy. I'm supposed to be making you comfortable, helping you, not the other way around. But I love him. I couldn't love anybody more. I worked with him a lot. I worked with Doris Burke a lot. Worked with John Barry, Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy. Worked with a bunch of people. So really, really enjoyed it. Just at some point, carrying the NBA load and the college load got to be a little bit too much. And it was a very, very tough decision. But decided to stick with college. And, either way, I would have been the luckiest guy in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone's put more time into basketball, just the game of basketball in general than Hubie has. Like it's actually incredible. No. And I will be there tuning in for his last broadcast for sure. The second last question I was going to ask you about. So you called Barry Bonds' 754th home run. Mm-hmm. And the significance of that obviously is he was chasing Hank Aaron, who had the record for the longest time at 755. When he hits 754, is something, like going off in the back of your mind, like, wait, hold on, there's a chance here that I'm going to call the one word to tie it and even potentially the one to pass the all-time record? Did that thought ever come across your mind when he had hit 754? This
is going to be the most disappointing part of the interview for you.
Oh, no.
I don't really remember that much about it, to be honest.
Okay, all right.
It's a lot of years ago, and I've called a lot of games and a lot of home runs.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember all that much. Even at that time, though, I don't want to say that it was muted, but it was a difficult thing to cover because of the steroid allegations, and we didn't know everything that we would know later, or we didn't think everything that we would suspect later. But it was, there were some people totally on his side and some people totally on Hank Aaron's side, right?
Sure,
so,
yeah.
And I will tell you this, like how you need like a secret access code for like a secondary, to get into things online. Mine is, and I'm not telling you what for, so it's not a problem, but okay. Mine is 755 for a bunch of things. It's not 762. So I think where I stand. But
fair enough.
I remember I did a bunch of games in the McGwire Sosa chase in 1998.
Right.
And things were a little more innocent then because we were even a little less in tune with what was going on. And I actually remember that more than I remember Barry Bonds. So I apologize for a lame answer. I wish I could give you something better. But if I'm thinking of my top 5 or 10 memories of calling baseball games, sadly, that's I don't remember enough about it to put it on there.
Before we get back to the show, we just want to let you know that this podcast is proudly brought to you by Tangerine. Tangerine is the official bank of Hello and Welcome, the Toronto Raptors, WNBA, and the NBA.
Yeah, man, and fans are at the core of everything that Tangerine does, and they're not just fans of basketball, they're fans of fans, right? And Will, I know you know what it's like to be a fan. You're a fan who's got a nickname for every starter. You're a fan who's 5 inches from the screen when the game is on. You're a fan who'll show up to Jurassic Park in a blizzard to cheer on your team.
They call me Fan Ho Park.
No, that's what Tangerine is all about. Fans of fans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you're hearing this, there's no doubting your commitment. And fans like you are at the heart of what makes this game special. That's why for the Raptors' 30th anniversary, Tangerine is shining a light on you, the fans, and celebrating the passion that you bring to the stands, because this is how we fan. To learn more about Tangerine's basketball partnerships, head to tangerine.ca/basketball. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, well, don't worry. The last one I had to ask of you was just, of course you remember, but tell us about Kyle Singler. If you search into YouTube, Dan Shulman, you'll eventually find Kyle Singler, which you might be like, okay, yeah, of course. He's a prominent collegiate player. No, you'll click the play because to set it up here, He's chasing down a loose ball, and he comes crashing full on into you guys, you and Dick, courtside.
No, he didn't hit Dick. He just hit me.
And the broadcast was killing me because obviously, in the commotion, your headphones pop off. Yeah. So you can't say anything in your headset. And so Dick's carrying it, and he's like, you took the charge. You took the charge. He said charge 12 times in a minute. Tell us about that moment.
Yeah, so I think it's 2010, the ACC tournament in Greensboro, North Carolina. Singler's playing for Duke. We're kind of between the foul line and midcourt and the basket on the near side to my left. A long shot hits the rim and is bouncing towards us, and here comes Singler. And he dives and saves the ball, goes airborne over the table, and just crushes me. On my right is Dick Vitale. On my left is Marty Aronoff, the statistician. And I am 28 years younger than Dick and maybe 32 years younger than Marty.
Right.
Now, this is a while ago, but still. And as you said, it breaks my headset. The chair I'm on kind of collapses. He's on me, I'm on the chair, and everything's on the ground. And he saved the ball. The game is still live. There's no whistle or anything like that. I think there were maybe 3-4 minutes left in the first half, but I can't remember. The play
in the first
goes on,
half.
as you say,
that's a lot of effort for the first half.
Yeah. And Dick is alone right now. We always have a spare headset just in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah. But
the game is still going. So Dick's like, he took the charge. He took the charge. And as you said, that's all he says.
It's like 12 times in a minute, I swear.
Yeah. It's amazing to me they didn't give me a raise and sign me to a new contract, because clearly the guy beside me can't do the job that I was supposed to do. So the whistle blows, or we go to the under 4 timeout. I don't remember. And, an audio technician runs out and gets the spare. My drink was gone. The little monitor we were using is gone. But then we got back. The funniest part to me is the next day in the Greensboro newspaper, which I think is the Observer, but I'm not sure. In the next day in the Greensboro, they have the game story on the game, and then like the little notes column at the bottom. And in the column at the bottom, it says, one of the more memorable moments was when Kyle Singler leaped over the table to save a ball, almost landing on Dick Vitale. That's the end of the story.
Can you get your name in the paper?
Not in the story.
Unbelievable.
At all. But yeah, that's one I always remember. And it's funny you mention it, because every now and again, if I speak to a class, a broadcasting class or something like that, they'll ask questions about that. And I'm always happy to retell that story.
That's great. I can't believe you got up unscathed, because again, it's like you got speared. Like it's unbelievable. But you took the charge.
Canada tough, baby. Canada tough.
you took the charge, as Dick would say. All right, Dan, I appreciate you so much for your time. We look forward to watching more Duke games and hearing your broadcast. But seriously, you are a Canadian icon, especially in the media space. You must be so proud now too that your son has followed in your footsteps as well. And when Blue Jays baseball comes around, it's like the dead of winter right now, so it feels a long ways away. But I'm sure you'll be down at spring training, and the whole season will roll around eventually. But we appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
I appreciate that. I'm very lucky to have 2 great jobs for 2 great companies doing 2 sports that I love, and been blessed. Got a few more years in me, as you said. My son Ben's doing it now, and I enjoy watching him. He's doing some G League and a little bit of FIBA and stuff like that too, along with the Jays. So I've been very lucky. Kind of just stumbled into this, and it wound up working out okay. But good to be with you, and glad to spend some time.
Yeah, next time we have you on, we're gonna ask you about what life would have been like if you stayed as an actuary. I don't think it would have been as exciting.
Be a shorter podcast.
It would have been like, yeah, that career sucks. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Hello Welcome podcast presented by Betway, and we'll catch you later this week.